I'm Val and I make sculpting videos online. Today I'm here to answer the question that I get on every video, and that is, how do I keep my clay clean? I strongly encourage not skipping any parts if you want to try this out, because every step is important to me. I made this video as succinct as possible while packing in all the info you would possibly need. So I hope this is helpful, and let's jump right in. One thing that people don't talk about enough is that the brand of polymer clay you're using really plays a huge role in how easy it is to work with and clean. You really want to find one that has a consistency you prefer, and that might take some trial and error. If you're a person whose hands tend to produce more sweat and oils, or if you live in warmer climates, you'd want to choose a firmer clay. I'd recommend Sculpey Premo, Fimo Regular, and Fimo Professional. If you have dry hands or you live in colder climates, I'd recommend softer clays like Sculpey Soufflé and Fimo Soft. Personally, my hands are in between. They don't get clammy unless it gets very warm. I personally swear by Sculpey Premo and all of the Fimo brands because they're not too soft, so your fingerprints don't get embedded into the clay every time you touch it, and you can sculpt it, clean it while holding it firmly without it deforming. The only clay that I always avoid is Sculpey 3, even though it has the most variety of colors and it's probably the most accessible brand in North America. It's way too soft for me to work with. Once dust floats onto it, it almost feels like it melts and embeds right into the clay, not to mention fingerprints every time I touch it. So nada, Sculpey 3 is not for me. You are part of your workspace, so make sure you wear an old, light-colored tee. Avoid dark-colored clothing, new shirts, and knit sweaters that shed a lot, because those fibers and lint will definitely land on your clay at some point and start a colony. Now let's get cleaning. First thing I do is wipe my table down with alcohol and paper towel. I use paper towels specifically because they shed little to no fibers, so you're not leaving behind lint as you're cleaning. Do avoid tissue paper, toilet paper, or rags because they leave behind so much fibers as you clean. Then use a lint roller to pick up any remaining dust and lint left behind by the paper towel. I also use the lint roller throughout my sculpting process to quickly clean off my hands if I touched my shirt or any other surfaces. Next step is to clean our tools. I actually don't regularly wash my tools. The best method in my experience is to just grab a scrap piece of clay and run it across your tools so that any unwanted clay will get picked up by it. You want to make sure you wash your hands thoroughly before you start, and also in between switching different clay colors as you work. This is to avoid any sweat or oils transferring onto your clay, making it too soft to work with, and also to avoid unwanted color contamination between different clay colors. Don't forget to keep your nails clean, especially if you use the tip of your fingers to sculpt like me. Then you probably want to keep your nails relatively short to avoid any dust or dirt hiding behind your nails. The last thing I do before I start is roll my lint roller between my hands again. Then I'll take a scrap piece of clay and run it across my table as well as between my hands, and you'll be really surprised how much remaining lint that can catch. To clean the surface of unbaked clay, I use rubbing alcohol, otherwise known as isopropyl alcohol, and cotton swabs. You can use alcohol between 50 to 99%. The higher the concentration, the stronger it's going to lift any dirt, dust, and discoloration. I personally use 50% just because it's what's available at my local dollar store, and it's been really effective for me over the years. Sometimes fibers can be embedded inside the clay and sticking out on the other end. If that's the case, you can either pull it out with your fingers, or if it's too small, I'd recommend using tweezers. Lastly, you can use your X-Acto knife to lift off the dirt from the surface. You want to keep the blade as parallel to the surface as possible so you don't leave any nick marks. You also want to look for any dirt that is embedded entirely inside the clay but still visible from the surface. These will be especially obvious if you're using translucent or light-colored clay. In this situation, I would use an X-Acto knife to cut it right out and mold the clay back to its original shape. If it's embedded close enough to the surface, you might get away with removing it with acetone after it's baked, but if it's embedded really deep and you still see it from the surface, you definitely don't want to bake it and deal with it later, because there's really no way to get it out after baking without changing its shape. Once your clay is baked, any remaining dust or fingerprints you can easily remove using 100% acetone. Acetone is the main ingredient used in nail polish removers, so you can easily buy this at your local drugstores or dollar stores. Do make sure though that you are using 100% acetone. Nail polish removers will often have coloring or moisturizers in them, and that can leave behind a residue on your clay, so make sure you read the ingredients on the bottle. I use acetone with cotton swabs to remove small dust particles, or cotton pads and paper towels if I want to smooth out larger surfaces. Acetone essentially dissolves away the surface of the clay, so it's very effective at removing dirt even if it's embedded a few millimeters deep. But keep in mind that because it does strip off the clay, it will flatten and change the shape of your piece the more you use it on an area. This is also a great method for getting rid of shine on your baked polymer clay. Shine on baked polymer clay will result if you baked your pieces on a shiny surface like a ceramic tile, tin foil, or glass, and just a little bit of acetone will make your clay matte again. Another method you can use is scraping small dust particles off with your X-Acto knife. This only works for dust that is resting on the surface of the clay, unfortunately. Again, when removing dust with an X-Acto knife, you want to try to keep your blade as parallel to the surface as possible so you don't create any sharp cuts into your piece. When you're doing this on colored clay, you're probably going to leave some white scratch marks behind, but you can easily remove these with a little bit of acetone. The last method of removing dust and fingerprints from baked clay is sanding. I only sand when it's a large piece that I'm trying to flatten and smoothen out, because otherwise it's a lot easier to get into the nooks and crannies with acetone and cotton swabs. The most important thing is to make sure you wet sand your polymer clay. This means you have to get a sandpaper suitable for both wet and dry sanding. It also means to either sand your polymer clay in a tub of water or to wet your sandpaper before sanding your piece. Wet sanding will reduce the amount of PVC particles that you inhale from the clay as you sand, and it prevents sanded clay dust from building up on your sandpaper and on your piece, which means you'll actually get a smooth finish and not a bunch of horrible white scratch marks. Lastly, if none of these solutions seem to work for you, don't worry. Remember, you can always sculpt with white clay and paint over it to hide any dirt or discoloration. With this method, you want to just focus on smoothing out the shape and form of your piece. And once it's baked, you can sand or use acetone to smoothen out any imperfections in terms of texture. Once you paint over it, any of the non-textured imperfections like dirt or discoloration is going to be hidden. This is a great solution if you're not set on using colored clay. Just note that the finished texture of painted clay is different and usually less smooth than using colored clay. And that covers everything that I do to keep my clay clean. I really hope this helps you improve the cleanliness of your sculptures. If you want to learn how to sculpt with me, I do have an in-depth online polymer clay course that I will leave in the description. And lastly, side note, I just want to thank everyone who supported the Straw Booty plush campaign in whatever capacity, because she is now fully funded and in production, and I just can't believe that we're going to be sending 315 straw booties all around the world. So thank you guys so much, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye!